Hey nerds, Todd Simmons coming at you again with a little more Toddomation. Today I want to talk about how to use a automation platform with your custom modules. I've seen a lot of searches just because I did a lot of searches for it initially when I did not know how to use my own custom modules inside an automation platform. So I wanted to show you how to do it and specifically how to do it without creating a custom package. So once again, I'm using Ansible automation platform, which used to be called Ansible Tower. The free version is AWX. I think I'm going to start doing some AWX videos as well. But this video you could probably use at least the playbooks on Galaxy, right? So it pretty much works the same because Galaxy is just concerned with the playbooks themselves. So there's pieces of this absolutely that you could use on a CLI-based automation platform. So let's just jump right into it, right? So when I say a custom module, I mean a custom module that doesn't have a package associated with it that you would do a pip install with. So, you know, you've written one module, maybe it's two modules, right, where you're defining methods, and then you're calling those methods from one of your Python scripts to do some task, right? So mine are going to focus on wireless. I do a lot of wireless networking. I am a wireless architect. So I'm going to show you 5 custom modules that I have written or that I have collaborated with on writing, and show you how to get those into Ansible without having to install it as a package, right? So going to do another video on showing you if you have enough, right? You're like, man, I need a package. I'm definitely going to do a video on that coming up. The other way that you could have done it is if you would have installed a custom execution environment. I'm going to do a video on that one as well. Already started prepping for that one. We're not going to talk about any of those two methods today. This would be like, hey, I got to get this thing running real fast. So I need to get these modules into Ansible or into my playbook or into my controller very, very quickly. And that's what I'm going to focus on. So we're going to do this in GitHub, right? We're going to take that information out of GitHub. The clone method of the Git extension for Ansible works really, really good. Makes it very, very easy to get files from GitHub and put them on our controller. Now, I'm going to focus on a private repo just because my custom modules, I only put in private repos. If you're doing this from a public repo, it makes it a lot simpler. You don't worry about logging in. The Git clone is certainly much easier, but I'm going to show you the steps on how to clone that repo, or at least the playbooks on how to do it, which I have a video for if you're not familiar on how to do it with a private repo and how to clone that. I'm going to go over it very, very quickly here, but if you need a detailed explanation, please check out my other video that shows you how to clone a private GitHub repo. So the first thing that you need to think about is your repo directory structure and how you're going to put it in GitHub. So if you have Git on your computer, your PC, Linux, whatever you're doing, you know, and you're using the CLI and Git to contact GitHub to do the updates, that's fine. In a previous video, I showed you how to get Git inside your VS Code if you're using VS Code. In my platform here today, I'm going to be using VS Code, so I'll put a link on here. If you don't know how to link your VS Code into your GitHub, go ahead and watch that video and then come back. The directory structure I'm going to use is very, very simple, right? So I'm going to use the custom modules, which you see here is the repo name inside my Git, and then I'm going to have a directory for playbooks, I'm going to have a directory for plugins, and then inside the plugins directory, I'm going to have the modules directory. Okay, so what's going to be in those directories is pretty simple. So inside the custom modules, I'm going to have your standard Git items, right? You got the readme.md. I'm also going to have the Git attributes, but one other file I'm going to put in here is this requirements txt file. Okay, so I'm going to use that because if your Python code has other modules that it needs that's publicly accessible, we're going to use that requirements txt file to actually install those files on the controller so you can use them with your software. If your Python doesn't need that, then you don't need the requirements txt. but most Python requires at least one module to be installed, and that's how we're going to install it using that requirements.txt. Jumping down into the playbooks directory, I'm going to have 4 playbooks for you today, and this is important, right? So I want to do a test. That's why we have this git clone test, just to make sure that your clone works, right? That piece is set up correctly. Then a package location, and I'll talk about that here in a second, but very, very important. And then my code is the AP check. I'm actually going to go online to my Arista Cloud platform and check and see if there's an AP down, and we purposely have one down. And notice there's an AP check with and an AP check without. What I'm going to do is the AP check without, I am not going to install my custom modules just to show you that it fails and where it fails. And then I'm going to show you the AP check with, right? And that's kind of the final product that makes the entire program run, because I've got all of my custom modules in, right? So that's the playbooks. Looking at the plugins, I've got an initpy. And if you don't know what the initpy is, it's not a real big deal here because we're manually installing these modules. But it's very, very important when we go create a package at a later date. So don't worry too much about that initpy. It's actually empty, so you don't have to worry about it. And then I've got a README inside the plugins as well. And then the modules, once again, I have another initpy. And we just set that up right now because you have to have that in the future if we want to later say, you know what, there's so many plugins here, let me just go ahead and create a package. We're not doing that today, but that's kind of what we're going to use those initpys for. And then the modules. The modules, I've got an AP show commands. That's actually just commands that my Python is going to run against switches, actually, because when I have my AP that is going to be reported down, which I know it's down, I've caused it to go down, so this would work. It's actually going to run commands. So just kind of showing you how we can get that into the controller to run the commands. So it's just not static Python files. And then I've got this AP test py. Now notice it's in blue. The reason it's in blue is because that's my main call. I'm going to use ap_test.py. I'm going to call that from the playbook. And that's going to start the chain of events. Once that happens, here are the 6 additional modules that I have written. And those modules will then start calling each other. So these are the custom pieces of the modules that I'm proving we can make work without doing pip installs for those particular modules, right? So I'm not going to go over heavily what they're in. Just let you know, I'm going to, like I said, I've got the access to the Arista Cloud for the Wi-Fi called CVQ. I have an AP that's down there. I'm going to contact the cloud. It's going to let me know that AP is down. Once that AP is down, I'm then going to go start doing troubleshooting on the switch that it was last connected to and generate some files. Okay, so what do we have to do? Well, we got to create those first 2 playbooks that I talked about. So looking over here, the first 2 playbooks are going to be this git clone test and this package location. So when we do that, the first thing I want to look at is this package location. You're like, well Todd, why do we need to know that? This is really, really important because you have to be 100% sure where you need to put your modules, right? So the reason that your custom modules don't work when you just copy them is because the Python interpreter that you're using probably doesn't know where they are. And the reason being is the directory where you put them is not in its search path for packages. So what this YAML file or this playbook is going to do is it's going to show you those locations. And then once you know those locations, you can make the determination of which of those paths you want to copy your modules to, because we have to put those modules in that path or in one of those directories that's being searched. Now, you'll find out a lot of people will tell you, well, just change your Python environment. I don't think that's a great idea. It's kind of set in a certain way. If that's how you want to do it, more power to you. I am not going to be changing the environment. I'm going to put files in a location that I'm allowed to put files, specifically the files in a particular search path. Right? So looking at that one, I've already made these Python, these YAML files, right? So as you can see, here's the first one here. I'm just going to highlight that down here. So what I'm going to do is the quick YAML for the playbook. as I called it, check Python interpreter environment. I'm only going to run it on localhost, not worried about facts. It's got 2 tasks. The first task, I am going to run a command on the controller itself. And here's the command, the Python-C, right? Import sys and then colon, so I can run 2 commands, and then print the system path. That's going to then give me the output that shows me all of the locations that are being searched by default by my Python interpreter. So let's run that one first. Well, actually, let's not run that one first. Let's look at the other one real quick. The git clone test is very, very simple. I'm just cloning the repository as a test to make sure that I don't have any issues, right? So if you've cloned a repository or if you've watched my previous video, this should be pretty self-explanatory. But just to show you, I'm going to use the secure key because it's private. And then whatever your repo name is, of course, here would go under repo. And then we're going to clone it. So if you have questions about that or not sure how to clone a private Git, once again, go ahead and watch my video on how to clone a private GitHub repo in Ansible automation platform. So let's go ahead and look at the custom module that we're going to create. And this is the module itself that is going to get the Git, pull the Git in. After it's been cloned, it's going to put the modules in the file location that we specified. Okay, so it's the GitHub login and clone the repo. This file's a little bit longer, right? It's actually here, and it's the AP check width because for my purposes, as you can see, it's not huge, but it does have a little bit of information in it, so about 60 lines. Just going through it initially, you're going to need to do your private Git login, and that's all this first part is, right? You've logged in to Git, you've cloned your repo. Then I'm going to install my custom Python modules. I'll show you how I got this directory. Because I've got multiple modules, 6 actually, I'm going to use a loop to install all of those to the same location. Then I'm going to install my non-custom modules. So that's your pip install, right? We're going to do a pip install based on the requirements txt that we're going to run. So with the requirements txt, if you don't know how to get that, it's just everything that you've pip installed for that particular program, or on your terminal. It's real simple. If you'll just do a pip freeze, that will actually give you an output to create that requirements. And I'll show you what my requirements looks like here in a minute. And then I'm just going to print all the logs. I'm generating a lot of log files when an AP goes down. So just to show you that it all worked, I'm going to generate those logs. The nice thing about when we do the git clone is it creates all of those directories for us. And that's why your directory structure was important, as I talked about at the beginning. So anything that you have in your Git, it's going to create those directories automatically on your controller, which then allows you to put things in those directories or pull things from those directories. So very, very important start. And that's why I start and stop with Git, is because the Ansible, Git module is just really, really good, right? So once I install that Git, or I clone that Git, then I'm going to take and I'm going to install all of my customs, right? You might not have 6, you might have 16, right? Whatever number that is fine, but I'm going to use the copy command, as you can see here, and I'm going to copy it from where it's at, which we talked about directory structure at the beginning, right? So plugins, modules, item is just going to identify these things in a loop. This is static, right? You have to know the name of your modules that you're going to copy in. And then afterwards, I'm going to install my public modules, like I said, using the requirements. And then I'm going to run I'm going to run my script, and then I'm going to go look for all the text files that should have been outputted from there. Okay, so let's just jump right in. Let's go start with a new project. Okay, so when you create your new project, it's real simple. You just go to the hamburger. From the hamburger, you go to projects. Once you get into projects, you would create add. Now I've already got this project created and prepped for this video, so I'm just going to open mine here with the edit, and it's going to look exactly like this screen over here. I called it Private Python Modules with Ansible. I did not put a description. My name was pretty self-descriptive. We're going to use the source control type of Git. So real quick, if you don't know how to create this project to log into Git, I've got another video, right, that shows you how to use source control to log into Git. So if you've gotten to this point and you're like, oh, I don't have any of that, go ahead and go back to that video and it'll show you how to log into Git from Ansible. A couple of things here. My execution environment, my control branch is main, my source control credential. After you watch that video, you'll know exactly what that is. And then I can save it. So what this is going to do is it's going to log into my Git. And this is my Git right here. So it's the custom modules one that I created. It's listed here. As you can see, if you don't know how to get that, once again, that other video shows you, but you can also go to SSH code here, copy that. That's going to show you how to get the directory that you want to do for the project. And when we create this project, it's going to go and find all of our playbooks by default. So I'm going to hit save. As soon as I hit save, I want to run a sync. Now, if you just created it, it'll run the sync immediately when you're done. So once the job status changes to successful, we can move on to the template. If you did not get successful, you're going to have to figure out why it didn't work. Just means either the login was wrong, the URL was wrong, something was not exactly right. Okay, so now let's go into templates. Okay, and once again, you would click on add and you would add the template. I've already created one with the exact same name as the project, the private Python modules with Ansible. So I'm just going to open it up so you can see it. Okay, so it's a job type run. I'm running at localhost only. The project, this is the project file that you just created, right? So when you hit this arrow, you'll want to choose that project file that you just created. For the execution environment, I'm just going to use the 2.9 engine. Playbook, really, really important. This is where it's going to show you all of your playbooks. Now, like I said, when we looked at my directory structure, I have 4, so you should see 4 here. Okay. For the credentials, very, very important part of the credentials. Once again, if you don't know how to make GitHub or Ansible clone your private GitHub, you need to go check out that other video because you have to create a credential type. Don't worry about it. I walk you through every single step of how to make that work. Okay, so you should have some credentials here. I'm not going to select the playbook yet. Just want to go down to the bottom. And privilege escalation is what you want marked. Now notice over here on my PowerPoint, I wanted to fit it on one page. So anything over here that I have left in default, I just kind of cut out. As you can see, it looks like the paper got ripped there. Except for the verbosity here, I'm going to change this verbosity to 1. The default is 0. I like to see a little more output. If it doesn't work, right, you want to up that verbosity to a different level. You have 5 levels of verbosity that are available, hence the -VVVVV when you do it on the command line. I like to see a little verbose output, so I'm going to put it as 1. Now, let's go back up to the playbook. So the first playbook that I want to run is going to be our package location. So this particular one, if we go in here, we look at our YAML for package location, it's going to go run and it's going to output the Python path for me. Very, very important, because if you don't know the path, you don't know where to put your custom modules. Okay, so I'm going to save this. Okay, and then I'm going to launch it. So hopefully after the running, it comes back green and we can see we have a successful, which is wonderful. So here's our standard out here. So notice in our standard out, it starts giving us our location. So user lib64 python 38.zip. Okay, it's a file. It's not really the library we're looking for. But here are all of your libraries that it's actually going to search for. Okay, let's go ahead and open this. Let's look at the JSON. So all of these directories here, you could put these in any directory that you want to. Now, here's the issue. You're not going to have access to all those directories. So what you want to do is you want to find a local one. So here's one. Here's a user local, lib64. That's not the one I'm going to use. I'm actually going to use this one right here. This user local library, Python 3.8 site packages. Now, if your controller is running 3.10 or whatever version of Python you're running, obviously your directory is going to be a little bit different, but that's where it's going to be looking for. Looking at any of these, right, you could or could not use them. You might have to test it just a little bit. If we look over here on my AP check with, you can see I'm putting everything in this user local library Python 3.8 site packages, just like I said here, because I know that one works. This one allows us, or is going to allow the YAML to copy those files into that directory. So you could use a different directory, but no, this is exactly how you find what directory it is that you want to run. Okay, so that worked great. No problems. Now we know, and moving on at this point, I'm going to use the destination is going to be user local library Python 3.8 site packages. That's going to be my destination folder when I copy all of my custom Python modules that are named down here on your bottom left as you're looking at my VS Code. So that's where I'm going to copy them. So the next thing I want to check just to make sure is that my template is not going to have an issue when I go to copy my private repo, right? So just kind of doing some double checks. That way I don't have so much to troubleshoot. So I'm going to go back to private Python modules with Ansible. I'm going to edit my template. The reason why is I'm going to choose a different package or playbook to run. So now I'm just going to do the git clone test. I'm going to save it. It's going to give me an option to launch it. And now I'm going to launch it. So as we're waiting for it to launch, this one should not take that long, but we should see if the login worked real fast. As you can see, enable GitHub local key, it worked. It copied the GitHub already, right? It cloned it, and then here's my output. So what I do when I do the git clone test, as you can see over here, I just like to say, hey, give me an ls-a1 or I'm sorry, not A1, AL, so all, and then list them. I register that or make a variable called directory out, and then I debug it to see what it is. So if I pull that up and I look at it, you can see, yep, here's all the directories and here's all the files that were in there. So it copied it with 0 errors, okay, which is what we want. So then we can move on. So at this particular point, we're ready to go look at the playbook specifically that we've written. Now, I want to go and show you the one just to show you it does not work without those custom modules. So when I do this without, notice it's the exact same playbook, but it's missing the install custom modules and jumps right to install non-custom Python modules. So let's go ahead and edit our template. So those two first have worked. So now we're going to do an AP check without. I'm going to go down here to the bottom. I'm going to do a save. And now I'm going to launch it. So understand, we expect this one to fail. And we expect this one to fail. And a lot of you have probably seen this error where it says module not found, right? That's probably what you searched to even get here at this particular point, right? So as you can see, we're installing the non-custom Python modules, right? So we're running a loop and we're taking all of the information that we just downloaded from our Git up, and then look, we got an error, okay? So where did we get the error at though? So notice we did the clone, we installed the non-custom Python modules, and then we did the run Python AP status script. There comes our failure. And let's open it up and see where it failed. So as we can see, module not found error. No module named AP troubleshooting. Okay, well, that's my first custom module. So if we look over here and I go to AP test, okay, so with the AP test, I tell it to run this AP status, okay, and the AP status, or no, I'm sorry, I don't tell it to run AP status. I tell it to run main, okay, so main is going to do this run module. The run module then goes to find AP status. And where's AP status? AP status is in the AP troubleshooting module. And there's my error, right? It came up and it said, look, that module is not installed. So I now know I didn't get through 3 lines of code before I hit that error. So hopefully that's what you've seen. If that's what you're seeing, I can fix it. So now let's close that. Okay, let's go back to our template. And now I'm going to change it to the YAML that's going to say with. And this is where my custom modules is. R, sorry. So I'm going to edit the modules or the template. Now I'm going to say AP check with. Now I have that command in there that says copy the files from the modules folder and into the packages folder that my Python interpreter is going to search. So I'm going to save it, and now I'm going to launch it. So this one's going to take a little bit longer to run because it's doing a lot more steps. It's got to go through that loop. It's trying to install everything that we've set our custom modules. We put in that directory on GitHub, and there it goes. As you can see, it ran the loop and it started copying those modules, which is what we want to see. Now, because that didn't fail, it's going to go into the next piece where it's going to install our non-custom modules as well. Now we're going to run that status script. So this is where we failed on the first attempt. So let's see if we get a failure or if that running turns into successful. That's what we always want to see, right? That's successful. I know it can get very unnerving, you know, when you've tried it 50 times in a row and it keeps failing and failing and failing. But if you're failing because of module not found, we're going to fix that for you today. And there we go. We come up on a successful. Okay, so let's look at it. So when we went through here and we did the install, we did the Python status script, as you can see, we got no issues. Now, you might be like, well, Todd, how do we know that it worked? Well, check it out, because I ran all those other things inside here, okay? I know I had an AP down, right? So the Arista Cloud CVQ platform was going to respond to the code that I wrote saying, yes, there's an AP down. And once I had that AP down, I went and troubleshot that AP. So the first thing that I printed out is the actual log file of what happened. So as you can see here, it says APs are being reported as down. Okay, so I now know that all my code ran because my code uses my custom modules to log in to CVQ. After I log into CVQ and I get that information back, it uses my custom modules to SSH to a switch. So I've written a lot of custom modules inside that switch. So as you can see, the log file says, yep, it went down, right? And then we started running it. And then afterwards, we see that the connection tests, which means I actually SSH to that switch, and it was completed. So I used every single one of my custom modules that I installed. And if you're like, well, how do we know the output? When you look at the output here, check it out. Here's all my output. So once I found that AP was down, right, the platform told me what switch it was on. So I SSH to that switch, and I have output from that switch, right? Not only do I have output, I have configuration information for the port associated with that switch. And then I was even able to look it up and see if there were any errors. So as you can see, I ran a bunch of commands on that switch specifically relating to this AP. And that's how I know that my custom modules were all used and it was successful. So that's it for this video, nerds. If you have any questions, please let me know. Like, subscribe, ask me any questions. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.